some very, very sad news broke last night about the passing of CBS Sports contributor and my very good friend, soccer's very good friend, Grant Wahl. It's with a very heavy heart that I say the following. We're deeply saddened by the sudden and tragic passing of Grant. He was an exceptional journalist and a tremendous friend, colleague, and ambassador for the beautiful game of soccer. Grant's impact and imprint on the soccer community within the US and globally will endure for years to come. All of us at CBS Sports offer our heartfelt condolences to Grant's wife, Dr. Celine Grounder, his family, and his friends. He collapsed suddenly on Friday in the press box at the stadium where Argentina and the Netherlands were playing. He may have suffered a heart attack or a pulmonary event, according to those close to the situation, but the exact cause of death is not yet known. Grant was 48 years old. Sometimes it's very difficult, life. And this is not easy for me. It's not easy for Nigel and Michael. And I know Jonathan knows Grant very well indeed. Mike, I'm going to come to you first because I know you know Grant pretty well. This was very difficult to process. It still is very difficult to process. And as we watch these games today, I found it very difficult to even focus and enjoy the games because of the news that broke last night. But Grant, being a very good friend of all of us in the soccer community, did so much for US soccer, did so much for journalism, did so much for people who didn't even know him. He was always someone who offered help and always wanted to change the world in a positive manner. And I know you came across him a couple of times.
Yeah, I'm at a loss for words. I'm still in shock. I remember when I got the news and really news started seeping out, getting texts from countless colleagues in the industry of Grant's passing. I didn't know what to do. I was in disbelief. Just a lot of people, especially Grant and his family being based in the New York area, just this is more than one man's life or one person's life. This is Grant's legacy. I think of now, one of the things that strikes me about Grant is how selfless he was, an accomplished journalist here in the United States, tenured at Sports Illustrated in the years past. I remember Grant when he first broke on the scene. He was the person that brought LeBron James to our very eyes. I remember reading his article saying, hey, look at this kid from Akron, Ohio, to shift his passion from LeBron James to the game of soccer here in the United States, being a pioneer for the game. And in one of the last conversations I had with Grant, not knowing it would be one of the last conversations, it was his passion to see the World Cup come back here to the United States in 2026 and really have that be his legacy that he wanted to leave. And I'm just devastated. I think this is a devastation for not just the sports media community, but soccer as a whole in the world.
Nigel, I know you're not sure if you ever came across Grant in person, but I can guarantee you he knew who you were, and he was an admirer of what you do for the beautiful game yourself, not only as a player, but for what you do in the media now. Grant really made a lot of waves happen in soccer, not just in the United States, but all across the world.
Yeah, he did. I think for me, Ian, from what I know of him and what I've seen of him, I probably maybe did come across him at my time, probably in the MLS and stuff like that. But I think for me, he's the foundation of soccer in America. He's one of the great foundations, respected media personalities, and his love and passion for the game and helping this game to be grown in America and to be understood at a high level. He is one of the foundations. And it is hard. It is a tough day when someone who has the same kind of goals and ambitions as yourselves, wanting the sport to grow in this country, wanting to educate people, and just a love for the sport, and because of what it can do to not just you as an individual, but what it can do for nations and people all around the world, and they can really relate to this one sport. It is a big loss. I think it's a big loss for US soccer. That's the big thing. And again, it kind of grounds you again where you realize that every day is a blessing. And I think that's something that throughout my career, when I got a little bit halfway through my career, that I kind of started to get that into life, into perspective, that every day is a blessing. And I always looked at football as a blessing. And I think Grant looked at football as a blessing without ever being a professional, but what he does. And it is a big loss. And our thoughts and prayers are with his family and his loved ones. I think they're the ones that need all our prayers and thoughts right now.
Yeah, well said, Nigel. And I think you speak very highly of Grant, considering obviously, you know, such a tremendous human being. I guarantee you at some point in your life, you came across him because he touched pretty much everyone who was involved in the US soccer market. He was an incredible journalist. He was a lover of the beautiful game. He was a unique individual, a different individual that always tried to change life for the better. And I was fortunate enough in life to come across Grant so many times, and early after I retired from soccer, and also when I was playing in Major League Soccer, and before that. It goes all the way back to 2006 when he spent time in Hamburg, in my city, and spent time at St. Pauli around the World Cup. He obviously spoke very highly of Hamburg, and it always was amazing to me that someone could care so much about soccer in the United States. Back then, as we all grew up watching US soccer grow and develop from afar sometimes, he was the one who was pushing it, always pushing it and pushing it and pushing it and trying to change the idea, the philosophy, the ideas and the mentality and what people thought about US soccer. So really, really incredible to see the messages of support for his wife Celine, and also the messages of support from all of the soccer world and the soccer community. If you look at the messages out there and just type in his name, so many people came into contact with Grant. So many people were touched in a positive manner by Grant. He affected their lives. He changed soccer for the better, and his legacy will forever live on in US soccer, no doubt about it. My personal story with him, obviously, it's not always easy to talk about, but I did go on his show last year, and we had a one-on-one discussion. And we talked about mental health, which is something that's incredibly close to me personally, having suffered from depression and suicidal thoughts and things like that. Never knew a platform where I could share my stories. And Grant invited me on his show, his podcast, and we talked openly for half of the show about mental health. He uses a therapist. I use a therapist. We talked about, people who are living in life and dealing with soccer and dealing with life in general and depression. And it was clearly evident that we both had similar interest about the subject. And I'll forever be grateful for him for allowing me to have a platform, sharing my name, sharing my voice, sharing my thoughts about mental health and whatever we can do to change the beautiful game for the better. It was an amazing friend that we just recently lost. He was also a massive lover of my city, New York City. And most people know Grant Wahl from traveling around the world and being this incredible journalist from around the world. But I'll remember him for his fondness of New York City, because New York City is very close to my heart. It always has been since I was a young boy. He lived in New York City. He lived and breathed New York City. He loved soccer from New York City. And New York City will forever have a part of Grant Wahl there, and I'll make sure that his legacy lives on in New York City sports as well. Mike, you've got a personal story yourself to share.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing your story and interaction with him. I think you can tell a lot about the quality of human being, about the legacy they leave and the people they keep and the lives they've touched. And just seeing the outcry of praise, the outcry of gratitude towards Grant, towards his life, towards the impact that he made throughout the soccer community and throughout the world. First time I ever came across Grant Wahl, I was playing for the Sierra Leone national team, and it was during the Ebola crisis. And it felt like no one cared until Grant Wahl came into all our lives. And he took an interest in not just me as a professional footballer, but in the fact that I was from Africa, in the fact that African soccer even existed. And just there was a curiosity about him to really speak on social justices through the beautiful game. You see the legacy he's left behind with what he did to stand for what he believed in Qatar, to stand for human rights. I just cannot applaud his values that I share, values that my wife and I share very much in our household. And he played a big part in my transition from retiring from professional football into having an interest into what we're doing here, into broadcasting, into podcasting, and being part of a company entity like CBS Sports. And so I will forever be grateful, because he didn't have to do that. He didn't have to pick up my phone call, but he gave me a belief that I could go and do this, and that I had a story to share that people need to hear, and that I had a voice, and that we needed more people of color to share their voices. And that was the first time I'd ever heard that in a professional soccer environment, that people of color do have a different voice, and it's needed to be heard. And so I'm forever grateful for the likes of a Grant Wahl.
Yeah, well said, well spoken. And that's exactly who Grant was. He was always for minorities, always trying to create equality, always fighting for the difference, all the way up until he recently passed, wearing the rainbow shirt in Qatar for his brother. I mean, and for also the LGBTQ plus community. And that's why he was wearing it. That's what he represented. I went back, and I won't stay too long talking about Grant. I'd like to get on with the show, and I'm sure he would like us to do that too. But I went back and looked through my messages because you guys were the first ones that brought it to my attention that there was something wrong yesterday. And I was driving in my car, and you just don't want to believe it when you see it. And then when I stopped my car and parked in my garage, and I had maybe 10 messages confirming it. And that was when it really hit me that you've not only lost someone who's so powerful in a beautiful game, in US soccer in particular, but you've also lost a friend who cares, who gives a shit, someone who just loves human beings and loves humans to be successful. He's always trying to push and help people, similar to your story right there, Mike. He wanted you to be successful because he liked you. He wanted you to be successful and give you an opportunity and share his contacts or whatever it may be. Yeah. And I went through my messages because when I heard how he passed, and potentially, it could have been in the stadium, it could have been in apparently an Uber, it could have been at the hospital. But when I heard that, I just thought that's not what I wanted. I want Grant to know and to recognize that he was loved from afar from so many people in the soccer community. And I think he knows that. And for me personally, I went through to look at my messages, my interactions across every platform, because he didn't just text you. He Twitter text you. He Instagram text you. He sent every message across every different platform because he followed everybody on all of his social media platforms and also personally on text message. And one message I did say to him, which made me really thankful that I sent this. I said to him he was the best journalist that this country has ever had and might be the best journalist in the world. And he heard that from me. And it meant a lot to me that I said that to him, that he knew that, because a lot of people feel the same. And it's not just because of his artistic work, how he was such a terrific journalist. It's also because of the human being he was as well. Now, Grant would want us all to continue to live our lives. Grant would want us all to continue to create great content. Grant would want us all to continue to be ourselves and produce content as best as we possibly can. And it is less than 24 hours since he passed, but we're going to get on with the show, and I'm going to bring as much intro as I possibly can, and I'm going to try to do it as best as I possibly can without breaking down. But before we move on from Grant, let's bring in our good friend and colleague, Jonathan Johnson, who also has a few stories to share about Grant Wahl before we get into our show. JJ, how are you doing?
Hey there, guys. Yeah, I would normally say great to be on with you, but obviously, given the circumstances, really unexpected news to wake up to. I mean, you think of the possible things that you might miss sort of overnight, being based in Europe and everything going on in the States, but that kind of thing is certainly not one of those kind of things that factors into your mind. I mean, I woke up during the night, which it's not that unusual, but then when I had a look at my phone and saw that I had like 200 plus messages, I knew something pretty big had happened and gone down, and I was just stunned when I opened up WhatsApp, Twitter, and saw everything confirming the reports about Grant. And it's dreadful. You kind of think you go back to sleep, or you try to sleep for a few more hours and wake up, and that it might just be a bad dream, and then you wake up and that confirmation is still there, and it's stunning. I'm not going to pretend that I was the closest person to Grant. We met on a couple of occasions, sort of had overlap on shows together. I was lucky enough to get to spend some time with him, some proper time in Paris when he was here for the Women's World Cup a few years back. And he was just a lovely, lovely guy, really, really thorough. I mean, I wrote on Twitter earlier, his book, The Beckham Experiment, for me as an aspiring journalist was really, something I really looked to. I had a short-lived dalliance with Major League Soccer, not because of Grant, but sort of around that time I was kind of pursuing it. And, that was Grant's first book, I believe, or certainly his first book on soccer. And I found it really, really inspirational. And, he was always somebody who would take the time to, give you an opinion, an honest opinion, give you some really great insight, and always be, very supportive. You never be critical. And, if he did have some sort of constructive criticism to give, he would do it sort of, publicly, sort of under his own steam, and I think I totally agree with what you were saying. I cannot think of any other sort of American soccer journalist, with all due respect to a lot of very good ones out there, who sort of come close to being as kind of iconic, as recognizable as Grant has been. He is, for people in Europe, when you talk about football in America, soccer, one of the first people that springs to mind is Grant Wahl. And I think that is really a testament to everything that he's achieved throughout his career, throughout his life. I think it's going to be difficult for the community to sort of process this properly. I mean, the thought of 2026 happening and him not being there is such a bizarre one to try and even process. I think we're all just still letting the news sink in, and it's going to take a while before it really is truly digested, unfortunately.